Hello and welcome back to the Doctor's Garage here on YouTube. So in this video today, I'm going to be attempting to change the fuel pump on my Defender 90 TD5 and finally get it back on the road. If you're interested in watching that, want to see what it's like to cut a hole in the load bay, which is the way I'm going to be doing this today, or if you've just been following my journey about getting this car back on the road and getting it working, watch this video. Really appreciate all the advice you guys have given me here on my last video. I've tried all those different things. Some of them are a little bit too technical for me, but on the whole I've tried a lot. And actually, I still think it's a fuel pump. I still think that seems to be the main thing that would have suddenly gone in this car. So that's what I'm going to start with replacing. And in this car particularly, there are some problems as to why I can't go from underneath and why I think it'll be more difficult than if I was to make a hatch in the back of the load bay, which is what I'm going to do in this video. So come with me, let's see how that goes. Looking under the car, if we have a really good look under here, it's pretty corroded, and I think these bolts are just going to end up shearing straight off. I have to angle grind so much off this cage that actually I've decided what's probably going to be better is just to go in from the load bay, drop straight into where the fuel pump is. I've got to get the measurements for that. I'll put them up on the screen and let's do a time lapse and a bit of music and talk about how I'm going to get into there and give you a voiceover of what it looks like as I do it in this video. So to start things off, marked out the back of the Defender load bay of where we're going to be cutting. I use this diagram I found on a forum. I would recommend using this if you think you're doing this job yourself. You can always pause the video just there. Now I ended up drilling down through the aluminium load bay very carefully and was checking depth all the time to make sure I wasn't too close to the fuel tank at this point, as I have no idea how deep it is. Ended up drilling holes at each corner and then a few more as I went. So next up was looking at cutting between those holes. I'd put a hole at each middle point as well as each end point for each line. For those that are new to the channel, I would really appreciate it if you give this video a like. Let me know what you think in the comments below and subscribe to my channel. I see 90% of people who watch my content aren't subscribed, so please consider subscribing and you'll keep updates on my journey so far with my Defender TD5. So then started using the angle grinder, being really superficial with the depth because again, not really sure how deep any of the sensitive things are underneath this load bay. Once I'd cut 3 of the edges, I left the 4th one connected. I really wanted to have a look underneath to decide how deep things were. And I also know that front edge is where the fuel lines are running forward to the engine. So really want to be careful of depth when you're doing that. Ended up levering up the flap just so I could have a look and actually ended up bending it back on itself eventually. And as a result, ended up cutting it at that point when it was bent up. Now there are some little wells you'll see on that right side of the flap where there's a little strut that goes underneath for support, and those wells you can just break with a little bit of a blade and just hammering them through, and it just helps you get that lid up a little bit easier. And once I lifted the flap up, you could see all this dirt and grime all stuck on top of the fuel pump. And so what I needed to do really was to get this all clean, to make sure that we can actually see what we're doing, take the fuel lines off, take the electricity lines off, and that's what I'm going to be doing next here in this video. So started off by hoovering things with a really dirty hoover just to get rid of all the dust and grime over the top of the pump. The hardest thing really at this point was actually finding the electricity connection, because that's what I wanted to unplug, which was very difficult, but then check and make sure the car was reading that as being, let's say, an empty tank once a fuel connection had been disconnected. That would have been reassuring for me at this point. So working around the electricity pump itself, trying to just make sure it's as clean as possible, and also the whole well was as clean as possible, because the last thing you want to do is drop dirt and grime into the tank once you pull the fuel pump out. So this is the electricity plug here that supplies the tank sensor and also the pump. That had been pulled out, and at this point now I'm also taking the fuel lines out as well. Quite simple, just a little bit of connection on the side. You get some pliers, just squeeze them together and the fuel lines just pop off. Turn the ignition on. Now it's disconnected, and as you can see, engine light, fuel light comes on, and it's registering as an empty tank, which is great. Did some checks, plug itself, and it was really unreliable. It was hit and miss what it was measuring. It was very difficult really to get an idea. The next thing you've got to do is turn this ring that holds the pump in. It's like a locking ring on top of the pump, and as you can see, it's very corroded. There's a tool you can get for this, but at this point I didn't have the tool, so I was using some screwdrivers and just hitting it very gently in an attempt to get it to rotate and spin. So this is the pump that we've taken out. It actually looks in pretty good condition, apart from the ring is not great. It was very difficult taking that ring out, and actually ended up sort of taking the whole thing out together, which isn't what I've seen online, but still that's what happened. In the bottom here, looks pretty clean. There's not a lot to see really. It's quite a nice pump, but I suppose it would be because this was one of the last TD5 Defenders made, so I suppose this would be quite a good example as part of what I've seen online. So Not really sure because this pump looks quite healthy, and that's a bit worrying because I was thinking that maybe it wouldn't be, but I found that actually you can see the connections for the pump and for the meter, so we're going to have a look at that and go from there. So another day and I'm back with my Defender, and I've got a new pump. So I got a Bearmac pump, and the reason I got a Bearmac pump and not the original one is because this was £80-ish and the original one's £300. And I thought, seeing as I've actually cut a hole in the bottom of the car and I can get straight into where the pump is, doesn't really matter if this fails. I've got a 3-year warranty on it, so I've heard people say you should always buy an original one, and I guess if I had taken the tank out I definitely would, because I wouldn't be able to get back to it. Whereas I thought, buy this one, let's see if this is a problem, and I can always swap it out and do it on warranty if it's a problem. So it's my new pump. Let's plug it in today. I think this is the problem that I'm getting, but the issue I've noticed with the front fuel light is it keeps coming on, going off. It's really unpredictable, and I've changed the relays in the front. There was here the yellow and black relay. I understand now that it's the black one, which is the fuel pump, and I actually bought a refurbed relay. I've swapped them all around. Doesn't really make a difference to anything, but sometimes the light comes on here, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not really sure what the problem is at all there. I've taken these plugs out as well, out of the ECU, so the red one, unplugged that. And as you can see, not really that oily there, so that doesn't seem to be the problem. I've had a look at all the other circuits and fuses, so I'm pretty sure it's the pump that's failing. However, in here you have an electrical connection, as you can see, and with that you've got two circuits. You've got one that gives you the fuel meter, so it tells you whether the tank's full or not, which is on a little float, as you can see on the old pump here. This float goes up and down and tells the car whether the tank is full or not. And on the other you've got the motor activity, I guess I call it that, but the bit that supplies the engine in the pump too, just a 12-volt connection. And when I've done that on a multimeter, I get different things coming from it. So sometimes I end up seeing a power off one of the circuits and the other, but sometimes not, and it's really unpredictable as to what exactly is going on. So I don't really know what the problem is here, to be honest. I can't really work it out, but I'm hoping a new pump will solve that. I plugged the new pump in here into the electrics. Now let's try the ignition. If we put the ignition on, let's have a look. So fuel light's not coming on now and the meter's not changing. And turn the engine. Well, to be fair, I'm not hearing anything in the back either, which is not a very good sign considering I've just changed to a new fuel pump. So that doesn't seem to work, and in a way I'm not really that surprised because this multimeter wasn't really reading much actually. So I'm a bit stuck now as to what to do. It's not the fuel pump. So I think based on that and some of the signs I've been having, I'm going to give a Live Tuning a call. They're the original ones that did the remap on this car, my stage 2, and see what those guys say. So I've just got off the phone with Martin over at Live Tuning. They've been incredibly useful with my TD5 since I got it actually and had it remapped. Got to know them there, and they've just been so useful to know for any of these sort of problems that I've had in my car. So I've explained the problem to them. They actually watched the last YouTube video, and they think this sounds like a chip in the ECU that fails with age. And the only way to know that really is to take the ECU apart and change that chip. Now, that does make sense to me, because from the things I've done today with the multimeter and checking things, I can see power's there sometimes, and then power's suddenly not there. So it's very intermittent. It feels like it's a problem that I probably can't get to, which makes sense that it might be something internal like the ECU that's causing this. So makes sense. I'm going to package the ECU up and send it to them. Now it's going to go over to Gary over at Live Tuning, the guy that owns it. He's an absolute mastermind when it comes to TD5 ECUs. He's going to take it apart, have a look, and hopefully get to the bottom of it. Obviously the problem with that is, if that has to happen, I'm going to need to get a new ECU. Going to have to get refurbed, I have to change all my codes and the remap, put it on this new ECU. It's going to be a bit expensive, but at least it solves the problem of what I'm dealing with. Otherwise, if there's not a topside switch failure, they're going to send the ECU back, and I'm going to have to take this to a garage and get it professionally looked at by someone, and I don't know where that's going to end up. So I kind of hope it is topside switch failure in this case, and I hope everyone's watching this, if you've got the same problem with yours, that's what it could be. Let's hope it is that. I'm going to package it up now and send it off to Alive. So the ECU for the car, as many of you watching probably all know, is down here. Could take these 2 bolts off just there, unplug it, and this is the ECU I'm going to post off. The ECU is now unplugged, and I'm just undoing the little bolts that hold it in and getting it out. This now is the computer for my TD5, and this is what we're going to be sending off to a Live Tuning. So thanks for watching this video on my journey so far on my car and getting it fixed. I do now have a massive hole in the back of my Defender, which isn't great, but at the same time, at least it's there now in case there is a fuel pump failure in the future. I can always get to it and replace it. This old pump is probably going to go back in because I think it's probably not even broken. So I've learned that about my car, got that far with it. So next stage is, let's get it posted. Follow me on the next video to see what happens when I get the ECU back. Is it going to work? Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.